Our social sabbatical engagement with Honeyguide was very much about conservation and the importance of a conservation center right here in Arusha to increase awareness to all stakeholders, mainly tourists, local and rural communities. So let's listen to Damian Bell explaining why conservation of wildlife and those rural communities is so important.
Tanzania depends a lot on tourism, and they come here for wildlife. I've forgotten, I think it's something like 13% of the GDP is from tourism. So maintaining the ecosystems, maintaining this wildlife is really important for the economy. And also everyone wants to carry on seeing elephants and wants to know that their children can see elephants in the future. So I work in conservation of wildlife, and I work primarily with communities. And there's always the question, why do you work with communities in conservation of wildlife? Is because that actually when the national parks were formed, they weren't made big enough. They'd actually have to be much larger than they were actually established. Most of them were established in the early days, and they didn't realize the population growth was going to be to the extent it is. And so today you've got about 60% of the wildlife in Tanzania is living outside national parks, is living on what we'd call community land, living in your back door, in your gardens, eating your rose beds. And what we primarily work on is getting communities to see some kind of value or benefit, kickback from wildlife. If these communities do see a benefit from wildlife, they in turn will be willing to conserve and keep that wildlife for generations to come.
Now we've got a clear understanding on conservation and the importance of it. Let's listen again to Damian on the actual project, which is a conservation center right here in Arusha that can be the place that helps increase awareness with local communities, rural communities, tourists coming here of conservation, and also give them a clear view on how each individual can contribute to conservation and make sure that there will still be wildlife for future generations.
When we are then talking about conservation and communities, it starts to get quite complex. We have tourists coming, we have people living in Tanzania, tour guides, school groups, masses of people. And if I was to actually ask you, where would you see wildlife? You'd probably say in a national park. Another question was, do national parks have fences? That would be a question that you probably wouldn't be able to answer. You'd probably think, well, they must have fences because otherwise the wildlife would get out. And since we're saying 60% of the wildlife live outside the national park, means they are getting out. There are all these questions that people are coming up with, and it's confusing everyone. And we are losing out. We're losing out on people's understanding of what the current challenges are and how they can be a solution, how they can partake in those challenges. So what we want to do is establish a conservation center where people can go and learn and actually find out what the current challenges are for conservation today, and also how they can help to become conservationists, how each individual person can actually contribute to the conservation of wildlife.
Last but not least, let's also listen to Saifuddin Khanbhai, who explains and gives insight in why he, as a philanthropic project, wants to support financially, but also with making the land available to have the conservation center built, and why he thinks it's important to support doing that and supporting with that also Honeyguide and potentially later on other organizations that are investing their time and energy in conservation of wildlife in the northern Tanzania region.
I think the reason why I started even contemplating this conservation museum, as we are calling it, for the conservation center, is basically I thought that we have made our money through tourism, selling art, craft, Tanzanite. All these people come here primarily to come and see the wildlife. But the way the situation is right now, the amount of animals being poached, the amount of the statistics of the animals going down, it came to a point that we had to do something. And when I say we, means the country itself has to do something, because we have inherited this wildlife, right? So Damian from Honeyguides obviously approached me on this and said, look, Saif, we would be interested in doing some sort of a conservation place here. It all started that way, and I decided, all right, I'm very keen too for the animals to be here. That's the important thing. And I said, yes, I would like to do something too. So that's how it all started. They wanted a small little place in my gallery, and it started from there. And then I said, all right, it won't work there. And we decided that, we have a piece of land at the back here, which would be the ideal spot for this conservation museum. So I think that's the initial part where it all started from. And then we got the Ecos team here, and they looked at the whole feasibility of how to give an experience to a client who comes to Tanzania, who comes to see the wildlife, but to understand the different challenges we have for this wildlife. At the same time, how the people should benefit too from the tourism. So it has to be a win-win situation. So there is no sort of policy whereupon the conflict itself has been highlighted. And I think we needed a sort of a center whereupon the education part was important. And this education part is very important for the grassroots levels to understand what conservation itself means. And this is where it all started from. And I said, yes, I am going to contribute and decide to give the land, and obviously then got involved even saying that I'm going to develop this idea of having the conservation museum obviously run by the Nature Conservancy, and the Nature Conservancy would be the guardians of this center, whereupon they're going to run it, and they are going to basically accrue even some sort of revenue out of this center, which will go towards wildlife conservation to help them, because the challenge here is two: the money, which is difficult always to get for wildlife conservation. So this was the best option to do, was to create a center where there's an awareness program, where foreigners would come in and understand what the challenges are, what to see, where to see, because there's so much happening all over the country basically. So I think that's where it all started from. And I think it has taken us gradually some years to have developed this design, and to see the design evolve itself. We've already contributed quite a bit of money already towards that. And then, I took a single-handed decision of saying that, all right, I'm going to go out full blast and develop this for the wildlife conservation. That's the primary focus, basically, is to go and assist in all the different programs we have, which Honeyguide has done some amazing work already over the years. So this will go to not only boost them, but at the same time, it will create a platform for institution like Nature Conservancy to showcase their program in Africa as a whole. This is a test model kind of thing, I think. Yeah. So I think this, with development of this conservation center, it is actually going to highlight and to bring awareness. And not only that, I think a lot of these tour guides, for example, they don't even understand what conservation. They take the people to the wildlife, they show them the wildlife, and off they go. But they don't understand the precautions of their actions at times. You know what I mean? So all this can be highlighted. And I think the more important thing is for the grassroots level, from the school level to the village level, to understand what conservation will benefit them.
Yeah.
And to do all that, I think we needed a platform And this is what I hopefully will be able to create, is a platform. And and then this can even go further on to other locations and talk about the same sort of thing. You know what I mean? That's what it is. Yeah.
So now I hope you have a clearer picture on the need for conservation, the challenges that it brings, and also how the Conservation Center right here in Arusha will help to contribute to solutions to those challenges, and how you as an individual can also contribute to conservation in general. I hope to have inspired you, and I hope you will take action as well when it comes to conservation of wildlife, not just in Tanzania but anywhere around the globe. Asante sana.